Hallelujah, hallelujah. That was Sisi Untokozo Mbambo Mbata saying Jehovah is your name. Welcome to Thriving in Abundance Talk. Of course, today we have our Woman Thrive series where we put a spotlight on a Queen of the Week. Yeah, our Queen of the Week is none other than my beautiful sister, Usisi Amanda Mhlongo KaNsibande. Welcome, Makidam.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me this morning, this day, this special day. Thank you so much.
Siyabonga yazi siyajabula ukuba nawe Nkosi yami kumnandi kanjani ukuvakashelwa by our beautiful sisters. Usipusha lapha every week on Tuesday with prayers ekseni ntambama. What an amazing time. Now, maybe let's open with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for the moment that you have given us. Today in Nkulunkulu Engcwele, where we are putting a spotlight on your daughter, Nkulunkulu Namandla Omqokile, for such a time as this, to liberate us. Moyo Engcwele kwezomnotho. Siyabonga Holy Spirit ukuthi isikhathi sakho siyisikhathi esihleze si perfect ngaso sonke isikhathi. And therefore we welcome you in this place ukuthi ngena ugcwale ukhulume through us for the benefit and the liberation of your people in the mighty inimitable name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
Yes. Yeah, manje ke wena ukamashalaba abekho mashalaba KZN mashalaba abakupho mashalaba.
Oh, mashalaba are from the Eastern Cape.
Oh, okay.
I'm from the Eastern Cape, what used to be called Siskai.
Yeah.
I was born Mdantsane.
All right.
The Eastern Cape, just outside East London, as the news would say.
Yeah.
But now we know that Mdantsane is in East London. It's a suburb just outside of East London city centre.
Yes.
Yes, I was born into my father and my mother. My mother is from Wakwamklenge. My father Wakwamashalaba.
Okay.
So yes, we grew up in such a lovely home.
Yes.
And I have 4 other siblings.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
2 brothers and 2 sisters. We are 3 girls.
Okay. That's exciting. Ay ngiyazizwa lezi ibongo lezi sesazekayo lapho mashalaba khona odokotela nomxenge ke, of course, in the political space isikakhulukazi lapha eKwaZulu Natal, you know. Yeah, that's beautiful. So now tell me a little bit about you ukhula lapha ya ekhaya ukuthi kene ufunde ekoleni kuhamba kanjani, you have an idea even at the time ukuthi ke what is it that you're going to be doing, you know, post matric, you know, just take us through that.
Oh my goodness. I grew up in a family of business people. My uncles were in business, my dad was in business, my mom was in business, my grandmother was in business. So one of the things my dad used to say to us that we must go to school so that we can run established businesses, not only the small businesses that they used to run that could only function on this side of the world. He believed in economic empowerment.
Yeah.
He used to say, like, as you've mentioned before, my family was quite a political family on both sides. But in his mindset, he was like, yes, we've got politics. Once we win politics, what then? So I need you guys to make sure you are educated, you understand money, you understand how to be economically empowered. Because nizolani once you have political freedom. So that always remained in my mind. And I think as well, it resonated so well in my heart. And I went on to, from primary school, high school, and at university, I studied and majored in economics and management so that I could fulfill my dream and the dream that my dad had for me, which was very much in line with my real purpose to run an established business.
Very interesting. You see, it's very interesting ukuthi lezi zinto sisheshe si-inculcate kubantwana bethu ukuthi yini esiyifisayo as parents. I mean, usho okufisayo. Of course, what happens eventually could be something different or it could be the very same thing. If umntwana aligned, kodwa kuhle as abazali singayi abdicate responsibility yethu yokuthi abantwana sizama ukuthi sibabonise. I'm finding this very exciting, and I do know ukuthi, of course, your parents were also in business. Ke manje, both your parents were in business. Do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit?
Oh, okay. I would love to start from my grandmother on the mother's side.
All right.
My mother was a proud JC holder, because
Yeah.
she used to have a JC
Yeah.
with bookkeeping, and to
Yeah.
her that was a very high
At the time?
At the time, it was really so. She was responsible for bookkeeping and accounting for her mother and father's business.
Okay.
They ran farms, they had shops, and so she was responsible for all the stock taking and ensuring. And then at a young age, I also used to help her coming from school. She's working in the shop, and then I would be the shop assistant. I started officially running as a cashier from 9 years of age.
Ah, mali lesuka utene mali. All right.
So, yes, so that was exciting. And my grandmother used to love, every time she felt she had extra income from her businesses, she would invest in a property. So by the time she passed, she had a number of properties. And her house, actually, this was exciting, used to be used at the time. We used to have SABC 1. They used SABC 1 used to go and take photos from her garden and the outside of her house for soapies, the most popular soapies in those days. So a property was always her love, and I think perhaps I inherited that love. And now I realize that the love for property is also a means to an end, but I always thought it's a hobby, it's something that you do on the side.
Yeah.
Because she did it on the side.
Yeah.
But by the time she passed, she had all of her children were left with a property of their own that was
Amazing.
completely, fully paid off.
Amazing. Yeah? All right, okay. Now to your parents.
Oh,
That
my
was a
goodness.
grandmother.
Yes.
Wachala seat.
Yes, my dad actually also ran his own business. He was very passionate about transport. So he had what he used to call in those days BT Mashalaba cartage contractor. And everybody would ask, what is this cartage contractor? So now I realize, it was a logistics business. So he used to move people and goods.
Yes.
So most people that are moving in businesses, when they're moving from one place to the other,
Yeah.
he would he had buses as well.
Yeah?
So buses that did long distance, and he had trucks that did local and long distance. And at some point when the whole BEE started, I think it was in the early 90s, before 1994, there was a lot of talk about how do you develop small businesses. And I remember his trucks were used for SAB, by SAB as one of the big cartage
Yes.
contractors, to move from one area to the other. That was one of the opening of the economy
Yeah.
in those days. So his logistics business, by the end of it all, he got rid of the buses, and now he was focusing on logistics and trucks. And even today, if you come to my house, you'll find a truck. Because my brother is also very passionate about logistics and into the truck business.
That's exciting. Property, logistics. Ziyakhala. Okay, that's good. That's a good grounding, if you ask me, ngempela. And kuyajabulisa ke masibona wena nawe kukhona okuphushayo okuya phambili, because I remember when we were growing up also in the townships, it was like a sprawling economy at the time, ngempela abantu abenezitolo, namatekisi, nama trucks, zonke lezo zinto kwakubuka kungazuthi impela banamabhizinisi amakhulu, because that's what we knew. We didn't know any better. But it breaks my heart sometimes manje mangibona ukuthi zonke lezi zinto seyishabalele ayisekho, and you know you walk around. I grew up in Kwamashu F section 8 olo, like because mina sasingekho ke isitolo kithi kodwa ngangahamba ngiyosebenza kagogo emarket gogo makhanya ngibale khona. Yeah, so this is very, so I'm just mentioning this because I'm thinking, I wonder faneke senze njani ukuze sikwazi ukubuyela kuleya ndawo whereby indawo zasemalokishini zikwazi ukuthi ziphinde zivuke ziphumelele, umnotho ucirculate in the economy. Kodwa kuseyinhlizweni zethu sonke ngiyazi, so uNkulunkulu uzosipha icebo lokuthi sibone ukuthi mhlambe silekela kanjani imiphakathi yethu ikwazi ukuphumelela. All right, and then ufike ke University of Western Cape wenze economics, and then uqede ke lapho. How was the experience? Kokunjani evarsity? Yazi mina mangathiwa ngirewind nje ngarewindela to my university years.
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely the exciting years.
Yeah.
Those were the exciting years. Because as well, my dad used to make me do his tax and keep his tax records, which is what my mother taught me, because she used to do that for her parents' businesses. So I automatically thought, okay, I'll do chartered accounting. I'll start off with chartered accounting. But when I went into a university, I registered for accounting. I found it to be quite confining for my personality type, because it was just me and the numbers on the book. But my brain was very broad orientated around how do you bring economic development?
Yeah.
How do you establish big businesses? And I could feel and hear my dad's voice coming out so strongly in my heart. And I realized now that this was my voice as well. So then I changed my majors from majoring in accounting. I continued to do accounting, but I majored in economics and management. And wow, that was exciting. It opened up my heart and my mind, and I got to be very involved. At the time, I was in Cape Town in the University of the Western Cape. In my last year, I got to be involved in the Olympic bid. That's South Africa, the International Olympic bid, in the project as one of my final year projects.
Yeah.
So I had to work with the institution that was doing the Olympic bid, the campaigning for the Olympic bid. Sadly, we couldn't get it, but it was lovely exposure in terms of how you manage big projects that bring economic development into the country. And that was quite exciting. It opened my eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Imagine, yes, sometimes when we chat, I gather ukuthi even those days also vele usumzalwane, and I'm like, oh, kodwa varsity kumnandi kanje. And I'm asking this question because ngifuna ulekelela umuntu omusha out there osibukelile ukuthi mhlambe kubaleke ngani ukuthi usheshe uyicoshe lento yokwazi ukuphila nokuhlala nomoya oyingcwele and choose a particular lifestyle early on in life.
In my situation, my neighbors were staunch Assemblies of God. They loved worship. So I used to go with them to church on Sundays. But my family in general was working on Sundays.
Yeah.
So on those times when I was not working, then I would go to church with my neighbors to Assemblies of God. And I just loved the praise and worship. I just loved Be Bright in the Corner. All those lovely youth choruses.
Yes.
So, but when I got to university, I think I was always a serious child because I had a very strong work ethic from home.
Yes.
So I did not really get to be so consumed with the lifestyle adversity because, but I had friends that were lovely, and actually starting back, I had friends that were very outgoing, but my dad's voice was so loud in my head that there are things that it didn't allow me to do, even though I was 12 hours drive away from him. Yet his voice was so loud in my head that certain things I just was not able to do. I didn't get into most of mischievous things because I was very cautious of where I was going. Then I only got to really have my own personal relationship with God in the final year, in my final year of
All
university.
All right.
For me, it was a very easy transition because I was quite conscious that I was moving out of campus now to go stay by myself. So I think originally I needed a sense of belonging.
Okay.
And church gave me that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a friend of mine actually who lived in Cape Town and said, hey, let's meet, because now in the final year, we were all trying to find our way into
Yes.
transitioning into the marketplace.
Yes.
So some of us were staying in the flats. And at that time, I had just found a flat. And I'm asking a friend of mine, where do we meet over the weekend? And she said, okay, actually, let's meet in what was Baxter Theatre at the time in Cape Town. Let's meet in Baxter Theatre. Let's meet at this time. Little did I know there was a church service there.
Oh, wow.
And it was so packed, I never got to see her. But I stayed in Baxter Theatre and I was like, I found my community.
Wow.
So it was the best appointment that
Yeah.
I was ditched in. Because I never got to see her, and it turned out she never went.
Oh, okay.
But I was like so sold into it, and it was a lovely experience.
Yes.
And I immediately made friends, and it was very close to my flat. So that's when I completely committed to God. Completely. I was so sold out. I used to go to church Friday nights. They used to have 3 youth services that were so vibrant. It was a thrill and an exciting. I think for me, worship has always been what has captured me in church. So they used to have like literally 5 to 6 different bands. So you never knew which band you were going to find in the service. And they were all very youth orientated. And when there's praise and worship, you used to feel the ground moving. And then there used to be a favorite songs that we used to have, I'm going to be a history maker.
Yeah.
You know, and all of us at that time were in our final years, you know,
Yes.
postgraduates.
Yes.
And we all believed that we were studying because we were going to be history makers.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and the church aligned itself to creating leaders. Actually, the ethos of the church was creating future leaders. So that was quite exciting. Pastor Paul was very passionate about campus ministry and creating future leaders. And there were leadership courses
Yes.
that were very linked to the Bible during the week, which I comfortably and happily attended
Yeah.
while I was finishing off school. And even when I started working, I continued to attend those leadership meetings that I can still remember. They were on a Tuesday night. Absolutely
Wow.
amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. I think 2 things for me as parents. What are we telling our children? Uma bephuma beya tertiary institutions, because you want your voice to always be ringing like her dad's voice that was always ringing in her head. Nami ngiyakhumbula, there was just one thing that I couldn't do at university. Precisely because of the very reason. And then the other thing is the importance of maybe considering going to indaba yamabandla akhona kuma campuses, because that's where you're going to find yonke lento isho, because it's nice and exciting and vibrant and youthful, you know. Kwakwenzeka nakuthina bandla kube khona echapel mangabe makukhona umnyakazo we-worship, you know, because of course worship will always is always exciting. So this is good. I love this, and I hope umuntu omusha ozosibukela uzokwazi ukuxosha ukubaluleka kweinto ezithile ufune kuyibheke, so that uzokwazi ukuthi uqede bakithi ikhozi yakho and then become a future leader. All right, Sis Amanda, and then uqedeke a university, and I know that you started working for one of the fuel companies, you know. So how was that, you know, the first few years in the marketplace, especially in a corporate setup?
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely lovely. I went, because I majored in management, I went straight into being a management trainee. So my responsibility, I can still remember today, was doing a retail analysis of locations of sites. Now that I think about it, it's very linked to property development, because you had to analyze the site and how productive or efficient was the site going to be as a fuel station. So I used to do economic analysis for those and then submit it to my manager. So, and then I would have to motivate and propose whether it should be approved or not approved. So this is when I realized, actually, my eyes started opening up, that there wasn't enough African people that were applying for sites. There wasn't enough, even the sites that were in Black-owned areas or African-owned areas or locations or townships. Those sites were still owned by other races. So that was quite interesting for me. And sometimes we would analyze as an organization sites that were available. And we would I started on weekends going out to find business people, to business associates, to say there are sites available who is interested in taking up these kind of opportunities. Because I realize, Guti, if this information does not go into people, then people will not know how to take advantage of the opportunities. So that was quite exciting, and I appreciated the support that I received from my boss at the time. And I think shortly after that, actually, that's when Minister Mhlongo was responsible for minerals and energy. And at that time, she was starting to talk about economic empowerment. And because of my background, I was very conscious of economic empowerment. And our MD at the time was from the US. So, and most established, there were established professionals in our industry were traditionally white males. So nobody understood what Minister Mhlongo was talking about and how it was going to be made possible. But because my boss was so open to my ideas, and I was so full of fresh ideas, and he was open to listening to all of my dreams. And I came up with strategies of how to come up with a task team. A task team that was going to come up and integrate women into the industry, because Minister Mhlongo at that time started introducing quotas in the industry before they were even introduced into the rest of the country. But in that industry, it was particular. So that's what helped me grow in the business, because then I understood the mind of a business person from my parents' perspective. And I also understood how it feels to be a woman and try and be economically active in these sectors. So, and then I was able to look at the point of views of the business and the established people that have been working for a long time, and the point of views of the African people in general, and the point of views of a small business, and what were the constraints that were holding them back from participating. And then I was immediately promoted into procurement, because they thought the focus then from the minister at that time was on how do we procure from African people. And then they promoted me into that angle, which then gave me a lot more freedom to be able to go and literally have supplier development seminars, supplier development and procurement systems, and put them in place and establish a task team within the organization that was going to work towards achieving the objectives as the minister continuously started to put more and more pressure. So, and then obviously because of the exposure, I started having to go into the meetings, the industry meetings, representing the organization on how then, what initiatives were we implementing. So, which the minister also was quite impressed at the time to find, and I was now promoted into a more supplier development manager position. So which gave me a lot more responsibility and gave me more rights to go and integrate with the industry. So which was absolutely exciting. And what was also interesting as well is that at that time, the organization that I worked for had their head office in Singapore, and they were in the Philippines. So they had a lot of operations in Asia. And Asia was leading the process of how do you make sure that the local people had economic empowerment. So I used to travel all over Asia to learn what was the best practices that had caused them to advance to the next level in terms of achieving economic empowerment for local people. So, and then I would come back and implement it in our office because I was in the head office. So those were extremely exciting times, extremely exciting times. But the turning point for me came when I realized that I was exposed and I was traveling business class, and then I had to come back to my flat. And at that time, I did not have a good car. And I had to travel back to my flat, and all of a sudden the shiny world that I live in the corporate world and the
corporate.
shiny world that I lived in internationally, and in the business lounges that I used to sit in, and the conversations that I used to have, and then come back to my bachelor unit. And then I started to feel that there was no balance between my own personal economic empowerment and what I was bringing into the industry and what I was bringing into the organization. So then I started to realize that maybe I should look for ways to move. Otherwise, I would have never thought of moving, because I thoroughly enjoyed
an enjoyable space.
Enjoyed my organization.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. You know, I actually remember those times very well. I remember them very well because there was a time when we were busy doing the Enterprise Development Forum on behalf of Ubaba Mazwai in Enterprise Magazine. And ngiyakhumbula leso sikhathi sisiphumzile, they will come, they will talk. And I actually know of empowerment groups that benefited from what you're talking about at the time. And you know, so it's exciting to know that you were part of that movement, because quite a number of people that I personally know of that got empowered from that, you know. So kudos to you, girl. Bayobongwa namaqhawe, baphiwe imqhele. And then you moved to an SOE. Yes. And how was the experience?
Oh my goodness. that was absolutely completely different, because the state-owned organization was very structured. It was very structured, and the procurement was very regulated. So, but I came in initially as a contracts manager. And as a contracts manager, I needed to negotiate the deals. But part of the big job that I had was to ensure that we facilitate more and more economic empowerment for women, for African people. So that was a lovely mandate. It was also quite special to come and find an organization that had the policies in place. Because on the other side, I was establishing the policies, and it felt like on the other side, it was optional for them to implement the policies. But on this side, it was already highly regulated. And so those were very exciting times in terms of exposure as well. Then I experienced a lot more exposure, and and then I got to be very technical now when I came into into the organization, to ensure as well that the procurement was not just in paper. It was also being implemented, which meant there was a lot of challenges. But the implementation on that side, what was lacking was the monitoring. The monitoring that what we had committed to be paying these particular contractors, we were actually paying according to. Nobody came in the middle and changed the terms of it. So you were monitoring the detail. You were monitoring that we were actually implementing and improving our performance in terms of economic empowerment, because we had now greater potential to make it happen. So those were very exciting times, and those were times when you realize as well that there were a number of established contracts that were so-called untouchables. And now to have to come in and challenge the status quo, because now in the industry you needed to make sure, and as well, it was interesting how it was looked at. It was the responsibility of the procurement manager to ensure that there was economic empowerment, and there was these economically empowered institutions that needed to be brought on site. But everybody else felt it was not their problem, and yet they are the ones that were signing on the actual contracts, you know, and they are the ones that were holding the budget. So to have to step into such toes, and at that time I was young looking, I was very tiny, and I used to work with very established and very experienced people. Had 20 years experience in their industries, and they were engineers as well. There were engineers that were used to running the operations quite comfortably with nobody challenging them. So it was a learning curve on how to to manage relationships.
Manage relationships. I was actually going to ask you, from that experience, what was the major lesson for you? Because I know I was hovering around that space at the time as a supplier and a service provider.
Yes. I remember a time where there was a lady that I didn't know before, but she used to run her business very well in Cape Town, and she was quite successful. But her surname was Mashalaba. And now my maiden surname comes as Mashalaba. And I found her already as a supplier. But now, because my surname was Mashalaba, anything else that I challenged from the other units, trying to motivate them to include more female owners of businesses, they would then challenge, why is there a Mashalaba on the contracts list? And I felt so bad, because then she ended up being intimidated, and ended up being subject to scrutiny because we shared the same surname. And before then, we didn't know each other.
Wow.
And she was a good businesswoman, and she was one of the few very good businesswomen that were operating in the industry. So we had to, obviously, but because I had relationships in the industry already, I was able to, write recommendations for her on the work that she had done, so that she can have the freedom to operate in other institutions as well. But it was a tough one to see that people would use whatever situation and whatever circumstance to ensure that they don't part with what they were used to.
Yeah. So would you say there was because I'm asking, what was the major lesson in that environment?
Lesson, yes.
Because I know it was an environment which was quite hectic.
Yeah. The environment was to be sober-minded, to know your story, to know your story, and I think that's when I also learned how to make sure that you are a good manager from administratively. Administratively, because I was driven by passion because of my background. And administratively, I was not so strong, especially being from the private sector. And I learned very quickly that administratively, I should make sure that every document was signed, every meeting that I have with various stakeholders and various department heads was recorded, and all the requirements were regulated. I even ended up introducing and working as a project leader in implementing ISO 9000. Because ISO 9000 and ISO 9001 to ensure that our compliance was on par. Because then the experienced people were looking for loopholes, not to implement the procurement policies. And they were also looking for your weaknesses, so that they would not implement the procurement processes. But it meant a lot of late nights. It meant a lot of ensuring that you know your story, you know every contract, you know when you're signing as well. Because it felt at some point that even your own subordinates were setting you up and bringing proposals to you for you to sign that were well motivated, but there were agendas behind that you were not aware of. So all those things meant that I needed to do my own research to before I sign any document, but at the same time not be a bottleneck. And also learn to build relationships in the industry, build relationships even in the organization. Because I was conscious that my role was to support the department heads, not to butt heads with them.
It's quite a balancing act.
And bring value, yes.
That's quite a balancing act, So that's amazing. And then you moved to government, now working. This is when I meet you. This very strict lady who suddenly has become our customer. And then how was the experience working for economic development?
Oh my goodness, I should give a little bit of background before I came to work for economic development. I was in the Western Cape all this time, and I was comfortable in the corporate culture of the Western Cape. And my husband finds a job in Durban. And I had never considered Durban as a place for economic empowerment.
All right.
you know, and I had never considered ever us moving. But he decides, as a family, we are moving to Durban. And at this stage, I am highly pregnant with my first child. And I'm so involved in my corporate career. So, but because I was dilly-dally and not making the decision, he decided to make the decision for all of us. We moved house, he packed the house.
He's the head,
And at this stage, I'm 36, 38 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
He organizes with the doctor to make sure that checks that I can fly, organizes the house for us in Durban. And literally by the time I deliver the baby, we are in Durban. So I'm now on maternity leave in Durban, and I'm trying to negotiate with my employer. So how do I now transfer to Durban? But by the grace of God, the procurement manager in Durban, it wasn't in Durban, but in the region in KZN, actually in Richards Bay at the time, was on maternity leave. So when my maternity leave finishes, her maternity leave was starting.
Okay.
Because of the experience that I had had in Cape Town and the things that the organization has had, we were able to achieve in Cape Town in procurement. They said we need the exact same thing.
Yes.
So they contracted me to come and work for them for that period on a project to ensure that I resolve. So that gave me a lovely transition into KwaZulu-Natal.
Oh, right.
So that was exciting, coming into a different procurement department. Now at least I had experience in the highly regulated environment. So that was an easy transition.
Yeah.
But the catch was that it was not in Durban, and we were living in Durban, and I had to travel out quite often. And my husband was like, you know what, I can't deal with a tired wife with a small baby. He started actively submitting my CVs because I wasn't the type to stay at home either. So believe me when I say he submitted my CV in economic development, because I was at that time I wasn't even active in reading the newspapers to see what was available because of juggling between small baby and traveling and all of that. But when he showed me after he submitted, and he was like, oh, this is great. And I also decided to go register actually in UKZN to actually ease myself into the economy of the province. So actually, and then I registered for MBA at the time. And that was the time, actually, after I finished the year, there was a whole big discussion about how do we standardize the MBAs and which one, you know. And then at that stage, I was pregnant with my second child, and then I didn't continue. And then they gave me the postgraduate degree, the postgraduate diploma for the 1 year that I had finished, which gave me transition into KZN, and it gave me much better understanding of what was happening in the province. Right at that time, I had an interview, and then within the interview, they were like, yes, come in.
All right.
So that was absolutely great. And now when I come in again here, I find myself in the environment where the department had the policies, but had never had an economic empowerment unit. So now I needed to establish. It took me back to establishing the task team again.
Data.
But good, because I had the experience in starting up a task team in the private sector, and I had an experience of a regulated industry. I was able to combine that experience, which was, I found actually KwaZulu-Natal to be a very vibrant economy. And compared to the Western Cape, there was a lot of African people that were active in the economy and hungry for growth. So that was quite exciting. And I came in at the time, Kababu Don, Bradon at the time, when and when I actually did my little bit of my research about how do we start now to have an economically vibrant economic empowerment unit in the province. Everybody pointed me out to Bradon already has the strategies in place. Bradon already has started something in that arena. So one of the first things that I did was to bring people together who were active in the economy in the province, various stakeholders in government, in private sector, civil society, and the various chambers, and or various business associations, including BMF at the time.
Yes,
They were
yes.
very active at that time.
Yeah.
So that's when we established and started up and having something we could table in Parliament, in the legislature, to say this is our strategy and our plan for KwaZulu-Natal, for business people of KwaZulu-Natal, to ensure that we take our economy to the next level.
Give me 3 things that that you learned when you were in that space. Because there was a lot that you did
Sure.
during that time. But I want you to give me 3 things that you learned that are probably going to assist a young person who is looking into getting into that space.
Sure.
Because, you know, some of these things you need to like maybe feel attracted to it. Because it's about serving. Working for government has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with going in there to serve the people. And economic development is quite critical because it becomes a catalyst for that.
Oh my goodness, I had so much to learn.
Yeah.
The one aspect that was so clear is that I was not used to working in the political space. Yes, I had a little bit of exposure in the private sector, working with Minister Mhlongo at the time, but I
Yes.
did not work directly with her.
Yeah.
But now having to, driven by passion and the love of business and the love of economic development, I realized it was not enough.
Yeah.
You also had to speak the political language so that you can have the budget to implement what you need to implement.
Yes.
And over and above that, you needed buy-in from the various departments. So there was a lot of stakeholders to consult with. And as well, so that means you needed to understand where each stakeholder was coming from. And the stakeholders, for example, heads of departments or people that were responsible for being head of ministries in the various departments. And there was the Premier's office that carried the mandate. There was your own political head in economic development.
Yes.
And there was your own colleagues that you needed to work with. So the balance between and recognize as well that economic development is a department with a lot of bureaucracy. So you need to ensure that you are compliant in terms
Compliance.
of ensuring that everything is signed for that you need to do, the budget itself, and you are able to attend the meetings that you need to be attending administratively. And over and above that, you needed to show that people from outside can feel that there is work being done. So it is very difficult to manage time and to do the work outside that needs to be done, because now you know you are responsible for the people of KwaZulu-Natal. You are accounting to the public. And yet you are also accounting to your immediate supervisor, and you are accounting to your political head. So that ability it felt like working 24 hours. That ability to be able to know now which stakeholder you are talking to and which language you need to be speaking to which stakeholder. Because the buy-in was important from various stakeholders.
Yes.
So, and it also means putting aside your own ego. So humility around how you related with people, and compassion. Compassion was very, very, very key, especially compassion towards the businesses. And at that time, that's when in government, we were starting to introduce, I think National Treasury introduced the payment in 30 days. And there was a lot of businesses that were struggling with that 30-day payment, because now they were not able to implement this, that, and the other, because their resources were locked out somewhere. So having compassion to people when they're bringing in their issues, and in those days we used to have the BEE symposiums, and people would bring their issues, and you need to be able to now, it felt like a really service, where you are sitting and recording the needs of the people, and in your head you're thinking, politically, how do you correct this? Policy-wise, how do you correct this? Administratively, how do you correct this? And you needed to move through those various aspects to ensure that it is fully corrected. And in some instances, as well not promise people things that you were not going to be able to do,
To deliver.
but at least receive the comments and have compassion to what people are going through.
Yeah.
And because people's livelihoods were dependent on their chicken business. You know, because it was a chicken business, it didn't mean it wasn't the same as a Coca-Cola established institution that was international,
Yeah.
because it was their livelihoods. And it was, and even when you also realize it was communities that were dependent on these economies, and the business people that were very active in BE at the time were community employers.
Yeah.
So it was, it was a humbling experience. And I think that's when I realized this is really my calling.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is really my calling, because very few people that I could see who were able to link the running of a business with the administrative side or with the policy side.
Yeah.
Because you require a different skill to develop a policy or develop a strategy.
Yeah.
You require a different skill to be a manager with subordinates. You also require a different skill to have compassion towards the business people and fully support them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope if you work for government, understanding that your responsibility is to serve, you don't do it without compassion. You don't do it without humility and some kindness. You know, just always try ukuthi ungene ecathulweni zalo muntu omsevayo, so that you are able to do it properly. All right, fast forward, we are here now. Khona value within, kukhona property development, business, ngizwa kancane ngathi kukhona nencwadi ezayo, kukhona ne prayer Tuesday, which we thoroughly enjoy as people in the marketplace. 5 o'clock in the morning, we are energized with this prayer. 6 o'clock in the evening, we have a guest coming to share with us on the experiences, the different topics. It's been an exciting. I think COVID bo. Yavundulula abantu COVID. Talk to us about those things that I've just mentioned. You can start with anyone, really, because that's where you are now, and I believe you are living your best life currently.
Yes, no, absolutely. Let me touch on the transition so that it doesn't. I used to absolutely love working in the space that I was working in.
Yes.
But by this time, before I left, I had 3 children. Oh no, I had 2 children before my 3rd child was born. But both of my children, because I was so busy, started being sick for one reason or another. And all of a sudden I realized that I was losing the ability to be fully committed at work, because the guilt was on another level. So I needed to find a job closer to home. I needed to be a lot more present. And in my mind, I came up with the idea that it's best for me to start my own business, so that I could transition and be able to give priority to my family that I felt at the time needed me more than my career did. So that's the transition that brought me into running my own business. But very soon I realized that I require a completely different skill set and a completely different mindset to running a business compared to coming into an established institution.
Yes.
So that took me through a journey of discovering who am I.
Yeah.
That journey of discovering who am I at this point, who am I after having having 2 children, who am I now in this decade of my life?
Yes.
So that process led me to realizing that I need to be operating from within. I need to revisit who I am and what is it that matters to me the most. And not take for granted that because my path was already established in the economic space, that was where I needed to be.
Yes.
So I looked at what came natural to me. And what I realized came so natural to me was the love of property. The love of managing money, the love of bettering my own life and bettering other people's lives. And I realized for me it wasn't enough to better my own life. I received such fulfillment in the previous positions that I had been because I could see other people growing.
Yes.
So I realized now, after a deep search, that that's where my passion was. So this is what launched me then into property development. Now, I started off in property investment, was I was still in corporate. Whatever extra income that I thought I had, I would invest in property. And now when I was no longer working for corporates, then I realized that property development is the way to go.
Yeah.
It's time for me to change the gear from investment to development, which is what really excited me. And it took me that research and deep dive to realize that even property development is a means to an end for me. My real heart is with economic development and economic empowerment. And that process of wealth creation is what excites me, not only for just me, but growing with others in that wealth creation process. Looking at youth, looking at women, looking at even a young man, for example. How do you bring economic empowerment? And I found property to be such a stable environment to create long-lasting wealth. To create a legacy, to create something that you can move to the next level. So I deeply immersed myself into studying what is this property all about? What is property development all about? While I was running my own business, I just finished now a course with UCT on property development as well. And that was also yet opening up and bringing structure into what I'm already doing, because I had built up so much experience. But it also helps me to impart the knowledge to other people as well. It also helped me question, why do I do this the way that I do it? And it helped me now be in a position where I can say I can run a seminar and teach other people how to be not only property investors, but property developers as well.
That's exciting. Huh? So we've got classes coming up. Talk to me about that. Nakusizofunda bakwethu.
Yes, we have property development classes and property development seminars that we run. Currently, we have just uploaded on a platform that is still going to be announced, but feel free to contact us in terms of which platform is most appropriate. We offer live Zoom sessions online, so that as well is happening. The next one will be the next one will be on the 28th of October, on Friday 28th of October, which will be a live online.
All right. Okay. Wow.
But we have also placed online recordings of classes where you can run them at your own pace. And we've broken them down into 30-minute sessions. And we have guest speakers as well.
Wow.
People that are specializing. How do you access funding in this space? How do you access markets in this industry? And how do you even become a good professional in this industry? So we have all those being dissected and in a form of a discussion. So if you're interested in learning about property, please feel free to join us and learn more about property development. I also realize that with property development comes the need to have the right mindset. To have the right mindset towards money. To have the right mindset and have a clear vision about where are you going with all this, because the money and the property is a means to an end.
It's a means to an end.
It is not a destination. So why you're doing it is very important. And it actually resonated with me so powerfully that property is a social issue.
Very much so.
It is a deeply social issue, because you are providing shelter. And when you see the families that are staying in your properties, you are so touched with passion that, oh my goodness, so many families are able to have a place to stay, a place they call home, because you have decided to stand up and implement your vision.
Wow, that's powerful. You have decided to stand up and implement your vision, and you have provided shelter for the communities. I'm finding that quite powerful. I'm finding that quite powerful because it's going to take people to be willing to stand up and be counted so that we can make the difference that we want to see in our communities, especially in this season. It's going to take all of us who feel called towards whatever that you feel called towards, to just go ahead and implement accordingly. So you said the class is next week, Friday.
The classes are next week, Friday.
Okay.
28th of October.
Yes.
From 9 to 5.
Okay, where can they get information about the class?
The information, actually, we have a WhatsApp line
Yes.
that is open.
Yes.
Please text, no voice notes.
Yeah.
Please text on 0833 924 803.
Okay.
Yes, on our social media platforms as well, Amanda Mhlongo.
Yes.
We also have a market by value within Economics Institute.
Yes.
That is our Facebook group.
Okay.
So you can also contact us there.
All right. Okay. Value Within on Facebook and also Amanda Mhlongo. Now you I'm excited because at some point. So when you see them, it becomes so exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it is quite exciting to have the book, the manuscript, the final manuscript that is edited of the book is out. It's Kingdom Economics.
Kingdom
Economics. And it also talks about when you implement your vision, how much you save other people as well.
Oh, yeah.
And the process between when you have before your vision is implemented, the process that you need to go through, what you need to understand, and what does the Bible say about economics, your understanding of money. There's a lot of money lessons in it. There's a lot of mindset lessons in it. But it's everything starting from the spiritual side of it, the practical side of it, the mindset side of it. So it covers all those different aspects. And how do you then move to a point where you are able to implement your vision and understand it's not about you.
And understand that it's not always about you. Implement your vision, but it's not always about you. It's not always about you. What can you tell a young person that has just listened to your story as besibukela on our channel and bafisa ukuthi yazi yini angiboni ukuthi mhlambe sikhona isingo sokuthi ngidlule zona zonke le stage usisi Amanda seyichazela ngoba sisikhokhile school fees, you know, kodwa babe intentional, because I find that young people like quick fixes. Bantu bamfudumezo kanti khona ezinye izinto ngeke uyifudumeze ezodinga ukuthi go through the process. What can you tell young people?
My advice to young people, I also am a mentor and a coach as well. So my advice often is, don't look far. Look and lean more towards what comes natural to you.
Look and lean more towards what comes natural to you. Njengoba ungibona nje la kwa thriving in abundant stock, it comes naturally.
Yes. The key though, when it comes natural to you, don't leave it there.
Yeah.
Package it.
Package it.
Put a bow on it.
Put a bow on it.
A pretty bow on it.
A pretty bow on it.
Brand it.
Brand it.
And sell it.
And sell it.
And when you sell it, make sure you scale it.
Scale it.
And that's where you can get to the next level.
That's when you get to the next level, because at the end of the day, we're in business for money. At the end of the day, we're in business for money. You are also a wife and a mother. Ziningi lezinto osishele zona, and mina ngiyibuza ukuthi lo muntu ibalance wenza kanjani ukuthi zonke lezi zinqa zakhe zihlale zimnandi. Funa kube khona phela happy medium. So how do you do that?
Sure. It's not an easy one. It's absolutely not an easy one. But one of the most important things, my love language is quality time.
Quality time.
Which makes it even more difficult to be away from home, away from those that I say I love.
Yeah.
But what I have realized is that what I do when I'm with them is what is most important. So when I'm present, I can't be with them and still be on my phone.
I hear you.
I can't be
Hey.
with them and still my mind hasn't finished work.
Ah.
So when I'm saying that now I am with you and I
Yes.
am home,
Yeah.
and I'm fully present when I'm home. And then my stamp of approval, when I do something at home, I do it well.
Yeah.
Yes, and when I relate with my husband or with my child, I'm looking at them in the eye, completely present and listening, actively listening and with passion and interested in what and who they are.
Yeah.
Interested in who they are and supporting them emotionally as well. And I think it's very important to understand the love language of your family. So that when the little time you have with them,
Yeah.
you can literally touch
Yeah.
them in the spot that means the most to them.
Wow.
Not to you, to them. So that you can, even when you are absent or you're leaving them, you are leaving them satisfied. You are leaving them fulfilled. You are leaving them still feeling your presence.
No. This is very important. Understand the love language of the people that you live with, your husband, your children, because istembu sakho sohlale sikhona ngoba uyabanda. Sende ngiyakhumbula khona ikhathi la engangiye ngithi kuzovela kancane ikhathi zantaba mabengena umakhedama lapha ngikubona umbuko emehlweni. Hey darling. Phela kuhle kube nofakazi eintweni. So lento ayishoyo sisamanda bazalwane uyayenza ngempela futhi uyenza ngempela. Okay, is there anything that you'd like to share with us namhlanje sis Amanda before we close?
Oh my goodness. Follow your heart.
Follow your heart.
Believe in who you are.
Believe in who you are.
And realize that the desires that you have in your heart are the desires that God has placed within you. The key is to find the most constructive way, the highest expression of that which is in your heart, the most constructive and highest expression of that is already in your heart, to be that which you bring into the world. I remember one of the, I had an impression of this earlier on, but when I watched a movie of a gentleman who used to be a thief, and he used to fraudulently fraud checks at the time of the checks. And this was a true story. He used to be so good at defrauding any form of check, and he used to cash them and travel internationally without being caught. And once those in the authority found him, he was jailed. But after he was jailed, when they needed to know if a check was genuine or not, they would go to jail and ask him. And he started being paid as a consultant on how to detect a fraudulent check and how to ensure that the checks could not be frauded, because he knew all the loopholes. And by the end, he was out of jail ultimately and ended up working for the American authorities to ensure that the bank industry did not have any more fraudulent checks. And he was instrumental in ensuring that fraud was eradicated around that time. And it came from his love of defrauding, for a lack of a better word.
Asikhuthazi ke bakithi ukuthi bese niyakwenza izinto ezobugebengu lapha uthi ufuna ube uchwepheshe ngoba uthula ubena uzokuqasha ukuthi ulekelele. No, that's not what we are encouraging. We're just saying
yes. What ultimately happened is that what he knew only to use for disruptive purposes, was he then found somebody who helped him package it and made it of highest use and in a constructive way, that he was able to change the banking industry. And once he had the right mindset, once he had the right way of thinking, he was able to achieve something that was not achievable.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Find the highest expression of yourself according to what God has placed in your heart. You did mention also that you're a coach. Is there an email address where they can reach you?
Okay. I do not coach one-on-ones anymore.
Okay.
Because of
All
time
right.
constraints.
Okay.
But once in a while, I would have courses that I'm issuing on how to move yourself from one level to the next.
All right.
You can get in touch with us on Amanda
Yeah.
at mnbs.co.za.
Amanda at mnbs.co.za. Amanda at mnbs.co.za. Siyabonga kakhulu wena kama Shalaba Njomane Pepe. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your time, and of course you look absolutely amazing in your Zulu Madam kimono there. Siyabonga ku Zulu Madam for dressing us today, and thank you to the team Ubusi Kumalo, Nombali Mhlongo, who are responsible for the technical side of our production. Igama lami nguZodwa Msimang KaNsibande, ngiyatholakala on Vibe FM every Wednesday at 9:40 lapho sikhuluma khona indaba ezimnandi nezibalekile nezakhayo komama. Vibe FM on Wednesday at 9:40. That was Woman Thrive.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the honor.
What a pleasure. What an absolute pleasure. God bless South Africa, and God bless Africa.
Jehovah.